Okay, that should be fine. Okay, we are live. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We took a little bit of a break, but here we are again. And I'm so happy to welcome Salima Rawji from CreateTO, which, by the way, was your request. So if you have other requests or guest speakers you would like me to invite, that would be, just reach out and say, hey, we have this idea. So here, CreateTO and specifically Salima is an example of a request coming from you, which was a great idea, by the way. I told Salima, I just reminded her that actually we met when the first 3 days, I was just so green to the city, which I just moved to Toronto, and Misha, my partner, told me, hey, you should really join me. There's this event U of T Planning is doing. They invited these 3 planners to share about their career and professional path. And Salima, and it's so strongly, I remember it so vividly because I guess I was, everything was so new to me. So Salima, thank you for being there back, 8 years ago, sharing your story and saying yes for today's presentation. I'm so happy to have you here. And Salima, take it from here. So for the audience, we have about 20 minutes of a presentation. Feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and I will, curate the questions at a Q&A, and we will wrap up in about 30 minutes. So Salima, take it from here.
Thank you, Nama, for having me. Thank you for asking me, and always a pleasure to just be in your presence and in your energy. I'm just going to share screen and just get into a little bit of an overview on CreateTO. We're a city organization, a city real estate agency. Preview maybe some of the projects that people know about, maybe some of the ones that people don't know about, and then get into the question and answer, like you said. So here we go. Can you guys see that okay? Yep. Great. So CreateTO, this looks like a long list, but it's a short presentation, promise. Who are we? CreateTO is actually a new organization. We were only founded in 2018, so we're just entering our 5th year. We're still still little kids and wanting to grow up and be those adults so quickly and so fast. But our job is to actually manage the vast real estate portfolio, strategically manage the vast real estate portfolio of the city of Toronto. Our job is to bring together lots of perspectives, stakeholders, partners, private sector, nonprofit sector, community, to develop innovative solutions, real estate solutions that enable the city to achieve its priorities, its policy objectives, while ensuring also the best use of our real estate, not just today, but also looking forward. Our organization has some key priorities. It's, of course, the delivery of affordable housing as rooted in the city's policy objectives, managing the city's real estate assets, creating opportunities for new city building and new objectives, supporting the vast land holdings that we have down in the port. The port lands is primarily owned actually by the city of Toronto, and so that's a huge focus. We have a big team at our office that works, just led by Scott Pennington, that works primarily on that. And of course, and doing all of this with the lens of environmental sustainability and climate. So the big picture, the first 5 years, we have these big 3 targets. As we enter our next 5 years, I'm sure those targets will evolve and change. But right now, where are we? Our job, unlock real estate value. And so take those underutilized assets and translate them into value. And so far, we're just over halfway there. We're halfway to our 10-year target. We've done about $1.5 billion. And we are on target to get to $2.5 billion in 10 years. To the delivery of affordable housing. So through just one of the programs, Housing Now, we've actually been able to allocate about almost 5,500 units of affordable housing on city-owned land. And our target is 10,000 units in 10 years. And lastly, operational savings. So thinking about how best to utilize the city's real estate and deliver that annual year-over-year operating savings back to the city. We'll talk about how we do each one of these things. So what does it mean to unlock land value? We use this term, it's just part of our vernacular. We thought take a minute and just make sure that we were on the same page with everyone here. But what do we mean when we say that? When we look at the vast holdings of the city, there's about 8,000 pieces of property inside the boundaries of the municipality in the 416 that the city owns or controls. And we look to see, are they performing at their best function? Are they underutilized? Do they meet the needs of community? And if not, how can we look at them strategically to accommodate city uses, to meet policy objectives like affordable housing or community spaces or parks, or even just public realm improvements? What can take those assets, make them better for the long term for community? That's really what we mean by unlocking land value. And using that land value to actually help fund this. So really innovative in terms of trying to ensure that the value, that the financial value that's in that property comes back to community through city building or city benefits like housing, community spaces, parks. Here's just an example of one of our objectives, affordable housing, and we'll just kind of run through that long list that you kind of saw on that agenda and different project examples. And so in Housing Now, which I've had the pleasure of leading for the last few years, and now my role is changing a bit. Nama and I were just chatting before we started here. My role is changing a bit. I'm actually working through our entire portfolio, which is a great challenge, and I'm so looking forward to it. But the housing file is one that I held close for the last couple of years, and very proud of our work here. We have taken 21 sites within the city of Toronto, and over those 21 sites have planned about 15,000 homes. And that, a minimum of a third of those, 5,000 of those, will be affordable rental homes. And that's just a start. It's halfway to the target. But what we see here is a great project example at Wilson Heights Boulevard. It's currently in plan of subdivision and site plan approval. And so it's on its way to construction. And that project's at Allen and the Wilson. And it really represents sort of the key distinct factors when we think about developing affordable housing projects. So here we're transit oriented. We're right at Wilson Station. We're doing a mixed income community that has affordable rental, market rental, as well as condominium. We're planning a new park. There's a new daycare facility. There's a 10,000 square foot community facility. And so really it's great improvements to public realm and access to the TTC. And so it's hitting all the notes that we try to achieve across new projects, not just thinking about the delivery of housing, but thinking about complete communities and how do we do that in a really fulsome way. Another example of this is our Housing Now project at 770 Don Mills Road. This one is, it's a huge file. It's, I think the stats along the bottom tell you, it's close to 1,200 units, over 1,200 units, of over 400 of them being affordable rental, over 400 being a market rental, and then of course the condominium component. But what makes this one so unique, it's not just that, it's that we are looking at this area and saying, oh my gosh, our client relationship teams, our stakeholder teams in our office are telling us there's a great need for a new elementary school in this area. Over COVID, we saw oversubscription to the elementary school in the area just to the south, that there was crowding that led to the spread of the greater spread of COVID-19. And what can we do from a city building perspective? We can work with the school board to deliver a new school. And so that's what we did here, integrated an elementary school into this project, in addition to a childcare facility, in addition to new parkland, and TRCA protected area, a retail frontage along Don Mills and Eglinton, all on 2 new transit lines, the Eglinton LRT as well as the Ontario line. So really interesting project at 770 Don Mills. And actually, when we zoom out from 770 Don Mills, we have another project across the street at 805 Don Mills. And in total, that node, we're going to see over 700 units of affordable housing when these projects come to fruition. It just got zoned in May, council approved. And so we're crossing our fingers for appeal period so we can get underway. Just as, again, we talked about housing, but just to zoom back out to what does it mean for us to manage the city's real estate assets and unlock value? Well, here's an example of us talking about looking at the real estate assets across the city from a portfolio perspective. And so my colleague Ashmeet Ali in our office leads a team who thinks about how can we view the city's real estate holdings by asset type, by category, and then look to optimize. And so one of the first ones that they kind of took this approach on was the city's office portfolio. And again, pre-COVID, pre us working from home full time, the city was already thinking about how do we bring more efficiency to the number of leases that we have, external leases? How do we make the office buildings that we have more efficient? And when they did that analysis, they realized there was actually over 8 properties that were surplus to the city's needs. And so now CreateTO has the opportunity on some of these assets to actually bring new city building approaches, new housing to that portfolio. Here's an example here at 610 Bay. It's the old bus terminal, Greyhound bus terminal, that's actually been relocated down to in Union Station. Makes a lot of sense when we have a transit hub. What do we do with this facility? We're in the hospital district. We're going to add a new EMS facility. Of course, housing, great demand. It's always going to be there. Looking to activate through commercial retail space, but also thinking about how can we add to innovation? How can we leverage that hospital district and maybe bring some interesting uses into this portfolio? And that's work that we're doing now on 610 Bay. Same thing, 931, another one of these assets where it's going to get consolidated into the overall kind of modern TO program that the city proper is running. And here's this asset that will be a surplus and will look to bring uses like affordable housing, like increased public realm, trying to push ourselves on design excellence, on sustainability across our portfolio. It's not just about housing though. There's things that aren't appropriate maybe for that use and can be really interesting community building sites. And so here is a picture of the Wellington Destructor that I'll talk about in a moment. But what we're saying on this slide is, my goodness, we have a need for long-term care. And we're working with our partners in long-term care at the City of Toronto to look for real estate solutions. So we've identified 3 new sites. That's over 1,100 new beds. Looking at where we need new libraries or where we need to rebuild new libraries, childcare, of course. I'm a young mother, and Nama, I know you are too. And so this one, it just hits home every time we start talking about childcare, thinking about the 15 waiting lists that I was on to be able to place my son. Parks, open space, paramedics posts. The paramedics are actually going through a change in the way they deliver their service. And so we're right there next to them trying to understand how can we integrate these into the new projects that we're doing, new fire stations, new community centers, and then really unique city building opportunities like Wellington Destructor. And this one actually, we went out to market to find a development partner, identified TAS, incredible homegrown real estate company to partner with. And TAS took this, what essentially was an old garbage incinerator, and brought this incredible vision of community and nonprofit and commercial and light industrial uses, a diverse range of tenancy that they'll do here, and programming partners, and really right in our vein of balancing for-profit and nonprofit for interesting business model that allows for a shared space for public, for people in the neighborhood, for people from around the neighborhood or other parts of the city or even outside of Toronto to come here. And what I love about their proposal is that they're going to celebrate the unique characteristics of the Destructor and acknowledge this through flexible spaces, new gathering spaces, for the neighborhood. So acknowledging the local context they're in, but creating really something special that other people from around the city will want to come to. And the core themes being education, creation, and innovation. So excited to be partnered with TAS on that one and look forward to where we're going to take it collectively. Another great example, 260 Adelaide. Really just the heart of what CreateTO does. This project actually was rooted in the city's desire for downtown park space, and working with our partners in Parks and Forestry and Rec and our partners inside City of Toronto and in our office, identified a new site for a city park, and we're able to leverage kind of neighboring city lands to not just deliver a new park, deliver a new fire station. The fire station was in need for repair, but also add a tremendous amount of housing, add affordable housing, a community space, a revitalized daycare, and a new paramedics post. And so it's thinking about what, historically those assets or those uses would have kind of sat on their own. And here we are on one or two pieces of property being able to create by thinking about this kind of collectively so much more good out of one intervention. So again, exciting project. We'll be up at July cycle of Toronto East York Community Council for its zoning and off to council. So we're looking forward to that. And then, of course, the Portlands. Wow, what an incredible opportunity in the port that CreateTO sits on the perch of. And sort of this picture shows us that opportunity in that background there. In the foreground, we have the Basin Street Media Hub, which something we're really proud of. Brought in international film studio production space, partnered there with Hackman to build out that facility, improve that public realm around the water's edge, but also just thinking about the opportunity to port, both the employment opportunity and what the future city building opportunity is. And, sort of the next frontier of Toronto. And so there's a lot of brilliant minds in our office that think about this on a daily basis, but you see 40 acres of new parkland, brownfield remediation, new commercial spaces, and so much more to come there. And I know you've had other guests talk about this opportunity, Nama. We're the landowners there. And so we're right in there on a daily basis, having this conversation, trying to figure out what that future of Toronto looks like. And here's an example of Leslie Lookout Park. And this is something that actually we're actively looking at right now. This is in the port. It's right on the Martin Goodman Trail. It's called Leslie Slip Lookout Park. Sorry, mouthful. I always get it confused. And so we're looking at actually a new opportunity here in the port. It's a park that will be a new public beach. It'll have sand, it'll have green dunes, it'll mimic sort of that industrial stockpiles. And so this is an interesting image because you see those stockpiles. So that idea, that flow will move its way into the park through these sand dunes. And at its heart, it will have this 1.9 acre open space that will connect the water's edge, where you can see that ship channel, and a viewing platform into the city of Toronto. So just really, really special. This was part of the Portlands planning framework, and it really is supposed to be a catalyst for the waterfront revitalization. And so we're activating the construction of this, the design of this right now, working with Claude Cormier on this project in our office. And what I think will be most exciting about this when it's done is that there'll be an opportunity for year-round programming, including pop-up events, concerts, public art, and just the opportunity to be right in the port and understand the scale of what's happening around us. And we're almost through here, but we can't have this presentation without talking about our lens of climate and environmental sustainability. And so everything we do, having this concept of transit-oriented, really progressive approach in terms of thinking about the city's policy direction on parking, and trying to be very serious about the reduction of, but also cleaning up the brownfield portfolio of the city, and taking some opportunity to study the future. We're doing a big mass timber pilot in our office right now, where we're not just trying to do a project that's mass timber. We're actually trying to do a project that's mass timber that can be used in the market as a model that can be replicated. And that's, those are two very different things, right? We can do something and do it once and do a great job and really be proud of it. But we're actually pushing ourselves here to say, how can we do something that others can copy? How can we be a leader in a space that people want to get into, but aren't necessarily able to take the risk? Can we take a little bit of that on, learn something, and kind of put it out there for public consumption? And that's the work that we're doing around our mass timber pilot. And here's just a picture of our a picture, but really like one of the first projects that I think will activate around this is 1117 Dundas Street West, which is a Green Pea parking lot over at Dundas and Ossington. And sort of the last example around environmental sustainability is this new district energy location at Blair Kipling. We have 7 blocks there, a new Etobicoke Civic Center that will go, a bunch of Housing Now blocks, and all of those Housing Now blocks are required to connect to district energy. And so they're actually mandated in our market offerings there, in our partnerships with developers, to do net zero. Or at least near net zero, looking at targeting the new Toronto Green Standards version 4, tier 3 is as high as you can go in housing development. So super proud of that work. Really complicated, interesting, big effort, but I think it'll be a great payout and something that, you know, we'll all have been proud to kind of lead through and look to the future of what does you know, what does progressive climate action look like in real estate in Toronto? And so that's my 20 minutes, Nama. Covered a lot, but I'll take the screen down.
Yeah. Okay. We do have some interesting questions.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I hope you're ready, Salima. Okay, so I'll start with Mark's question on the chat. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it, but let me read it. The new concept to Keys program dashboard showing status on 50 Wilson Heights and 705 Warden as delayed at site plan control. Any insight into the nature of those delays and how the rapid increased construction cost and interest rates are impacting Housing Now plans that were designed back in 2019? How much time, process, money has 2CK program saved on CreateTO sites?
Okay, so I think it's probably best for the city to talk about C2K and sort of those, you know, metrics. I'm not as close to the C2K stats as the questions that Mark you're asking, but happy to always, you know, bring those connections forward as we do. And Nama, you know this too, to ensure that we're delivering the best we can. But I'll say the partnership with C2K has been fantastic. Just having that level of dedication. And so what this is for people that may not be familiar is there's a division inside the City Hall who is making sure that affordable housing projects are moving at the pace that they need to get delivered as quickly as they possibly can. Now, of course, you identified that they're in this process of site plan control, and they're working through, essentially what that delay means is they're working through financing. And you'll see that in our dashboards too. I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that we're in a rapidly increasing inflationary environment. And so what a project financially was planned to do in 2018 or 2019 or even 2020 is kind of different than it is in 2022. And so I think that's a nod to that, but we're still here, we're still pushing and trying to use this time to advance the things that won't change. Inflation is not going to change what a great mixed use development build form looks like. Inflation is not going to change what good public realm is. And so working through those aspects while we work out the bigger picture questions is absolutely something that we're working on right now. And then I can, Mark, introduce you to the C2K team so that you can have a little bit more insight into, you know, what those metrics are that they might track. But I can say from my experience, it's been fantastic.
I have a question here about the province, and I would like to, you know, open it up a little bit. And if you could speak to partnerships in general, sure, because I always bring Housing Now as a perfect example of public-private partnerships and how, you know, when I'm asking about should the government take, you know, a bigger role, and it's like, no, in my opinion, it's about partnerships. So can you speak to your vision? What other partnership opportunities could be, or the province role? Could you speak to that?
Absolutely. No, thank you so much for that question, actually, because to me, this is why I work in this role and have been in this kind of public sector. I don't want to say broker because we're so much more than that, but being able to see like that gray space between areas, partnerships. These are big, meaty problems of today. and they're not going to be solved by one sector alone. If it was a solution the private sector could have employed, they would have. If it could have been done by government alone, they could have. But really, the sectors coming together is just where I think, in my mind, the best solutions lie. We get to have the best of all the worlds. And so in everything we do at CreateTO, it's about partnership. Every time we're talking about a market offering, we're talking about working with the private market, and we think really carefully about what is government best positioned to do, what is the private sector best positioned to do, and how do we land in a design that leverages the best of everyone. And I would say that we think about that too when it comes to our government partners. And so whether that be working with the federal government and CMHC, or working with the province, working whoever it is at the table, I want to say the more the better, because the more complicated. But that and this is not new for me to be saying. I think that is the way of the future, right? Like, no longer even our private sector entities just working alone, they partner, and that's partnership, because they're bringing best practice from each other to the table, and we do the same. And really think at CreateTO that we can see both sides of the coin and are able to kind of bring fairness and bring kind of a place where both parties maybe are a little bit uncomfortable, but get to the best outcome for community and for the long run.
And it's a perfect, the next question is from Hamza about, I'll just read it. Does CreateTO operate as the developer for these new units, or do you partner with private developers? And if you could speak maybe specifically, I know like you tested different things with Housing Now. Wilson is different from, you learned your lessons. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Nama. And I would say that so we're not necessarily the developer, but we're more than just selling land. So in most cases, and segue sort of into the second part of your question there, in most cases, we are zoning the land and then working with the private sector to bring forward, they'll construct it and own the building and lease out those units in the long run. They're 99-year land leases. But for us, it's constant iteration. Actually, it's constant learning. It's every time something happens, we're looking at that and saying, was that just happenstance? Is there something structural in the program that we need to change to do better? We're trying pilots out where we're not zoning it ourselves and we're having the market zone it, trying to understand what's good and bad about that scenario. We're not married to anything. We just want the best outcome and the quickest outcome, the most efficient outcome to the delivery of the housing. And so I think that's what's nice about being in the agency, is that we can be agile and we can adapt and grow as we need to. And we're constantly getting advice and feedback from our board as well, that we are bringing into the system and into our process and approach. And from community, actually, great example. We had community members knock on our door and say, hey, why don't you think about XYZ approach when you're doing community consultation? And we thought about that carefully. We took a question to our board, and we're working now to refine that process. And so you'll see it look different next time around, because we got advice from community and we got advice from our board. And so that's just a constant evolution for us.
I have an interesting question that is more architecture related and less politics. Can you speak, it's from Julia, can you speak to how you balance retrofitting and building completely new? For example, with the former Greyhound site, is building around the existing building being considered, or will it be a full teardown?
So in terms of the question on retrofit versus building new, most of what CreateTO does is going to be net new. We are more in the development space than we are in the retrofit. Things like our Modern TO portfolio, we're retrofitting buildings sit with our partners at City Hall, in city real estate. And we work very closely with them, like on hand in hand on most things, but they would take the lead on that. On a development project where we have an existing asset like the bus terminal, we take heritage restoration very seriously. And so more from a planning perspective and a regulatory perspective, we'll work with our partners in heritage to ensure that we're respecting the important elements. Same with the Wellington Destructor, right? Important heritage asset. So we will, took that seriously and made sure that our partners understood what was important and not important about, or what was important and what was flexible about those building structures that had to be maintained and taken through the heritage preservation process.
Salima, we're getting more and more questions. So And the idea of having a 30-minute webinar, and you all, commented on that, is that to make something that is very digestible within your busy day. So I would encourage you maybe to post those questions on the YouTube channel, and maybe, I don't know, it's a little bit overwhelming. So, and it is 11:30, and I want to be respectful of the time frame. So Salima, thank you very, very much for your informative presentation and being here and answer a tiny portion of the questions. And thank you everyone for being here.